Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is a full market analysis 127. So what we're going to do is pretty much look at the analysis for this week and compare analysis from last week as well. So we'll start off with gold. So what we are looking out for is pretty much this kind of basis idea where we're looking for pretty much this move towards the upside. So as we can see with gold, we dropped off quite nicely into 1800s, but I'm thinking we could probably make one more push lower, but I'm not entirely sure because we've got a nice response from this drop down, so this could possibly start pumping back up. So I'm just waiting to see if we can break lower, but ultimately watching for price to aim higher. Looking for price to go into the 2000 levels. So like I said, this level and bias still holds. If we break below 1760, that's when we're going to be looking at a sell bias, but for now I'm still happy for any buy biases. So if we check EU and the rest of the US dollar pairs, so with this what we're looking out for is pretty much the situation where we could expect a turnover. So where was it, 13th? So this week we pretty much came into some choppy price action, and then we had a springboard to the upside. So with this, I'm actually curious because we could have one more push low in which we end up going higher. So maybe looking at 1.03, and then potentially pushing higher. Again, this could hold or right now as a double bottom, or it could head it could basically hold at 1.04 and give like a double bottom pattern, or we could find support at 1.03. So we don't necessarily know just yet, but I'm liking the way that price is already pushing up there. So if we take a look into AU or NZD, US dollar rather, I'm going to be looking at a similar thing again. So we can see price is already starting to kind of recover up higher, so we could probably just move this. And as I'm recording this, the market is just kind of open for an hour or so. But yeah, so this could happen, or we could probably get a nice sell-off, and then we could look at 0.615, possibly even 0.61 as the next position. And then we could see like a turnover in price. So my next kind of basis is something like this, but pretty much we're ultimately pushing up higher. So if we take a look at AU, again it's going to be a similar basis and a similar story. Where was he, 13th? So looking for that sharp move to the upside. As we can see, we found it, but again I'm not necessarily sure if this is now going to give us the biggest push to the upside. So what we could end up seeing happening is a move to the downside, whether we get a pullback or not into the downside. So not entirely sure, but maybe at 0.68, and then we could get the rally that I'm potentially looking out for. So that's what I'm looking at with the US dollar pairs. So if we kind of broaden ourselves into the Japanese yen pairs, so transitioning into UJ. So what I'm looking out for, so for this 13, so pretty much you could argue that these two basis was kind of correct, in the sense that we had the drop, and then we equally had the nice bounce back up. So what I'm going to be looking at for this week again is pretty much this action where we get the rally to the top. So possibly looking at 136 with the sell-off, possibly, and this could be a huge sell-off, providing the fact that we get this, and it could make sense because tying on with the other US dollar pairs, we could see the others. So for example, EU, AU, and NZDU going higher. This would make sense for this to drop lower. So with that being said, we could see some eventually price could drop lower, but it will be quite strong. So again, this could obviously go just a lot higher, so 137, 136. So I wouldn't necessarily look for sales aggressively just yet, but just be aware that this could potentially happen. and regarding wherever we find that resistance, that's where we'll find it, but we don't necessarily know just yet, right? So I'm going to be looking out for that. Equally, I'm going to be looking out for some buys to the upside while we search for that resistance level, but just keeping the eyes peeled for that. So if we take this analysis with CJ, so pretty much I'm probably going to most likely stick with this bias. Going to be looking out for, so it was the 13, so pretty much we started to sell off quite nicely. Again, we found kind of a nice bounce back up, so I'm not entirely sure if this is going to hold but we could expect price to, I'm thinking price may go into 108, 107.5, something in that realm. So whether we see price, find support from this low, so 102, or if we go deeper, again, not entirely sure where this could happen. I don't know what I'm trying to draw here. Let me just kind of push this up. But yeah, something like this, where we get a deeper pullback, but ultimately we're watching for this swing to the upside, ideally. And I think that kind of makes sense following the UJ thing. Also looking at EJ, so similar kind of process here. We can see, we had the drop low and we had kind of that swivel and drift towards the upside, so kind of curious to see if we can follow this through now. But I'm also just aware that we could drop lower once more, so I'm not if this does happen, I'm going to be curious to see what would happen on, well, first a sell-off, and then two, if this does happen, how does it respond to 138? And if we get some rejections forming, we could potentially see this either again, well, rally back up into the highs 146, 145, or it could just break through. But following on with the UJ and the other Japanese yen pairs, we could see some action like this. So this sell-off doesn't quite surprise me, but that's why I'm kind of expecting it. So if we take a look into AJ for the last Japanese yen pairs, so we can see pretty much, again, I'm looking out for this kind of motion from last week. So we came into the 13th, so we kind of started to see this kind of momentum kicking in. So what I'm thinking again is probably just leaving it again with the drawings, if I'm being honest. Probably a similar situation with the previous pair, is we may get a deeper pullback. That's all I can probably suggest for this week with AJ. So again, I'm following on this kind of idea that we could potentially take out 98 or head into 97, and then we find that kind of rejection or resistance, but providing that we see it, then we can start looking for those sells, right? And then we'll see what can come from that. So if you take a look in the last two US dollar pairs, so US dollar franc, Swiss franc, so this one I wasn't actually expecting this much of a drop, if I'm being honest. So I know originally I did kind of draw this in, but I didn't really expect it to be this aggressive. So with that being said, there, again, because it quite surprised me, what I'm looking out for now is potentially one or two things. Price coming to maybe 0.95, and we need to see how price reacts here, because we could end up rejecting and going higher. And I think that's probably the best kind of way that I'll be looking at it, if I'm being honest. So with this, we could end up having, a major pullback to go higher. So we could end up having like a deeper, well, kind of recovery, type of retracement type of thing. So like this. So price is roughly here right now. So we could get, maybe some kind of retracement of this huge sell-off. And then we could look at sells, and then we need to look here for any possible buying option, because I am thinking we can head into 1.01, and I'm just trying to think if this kind of makes sense, providing with the Japanese yen. But again, with the Swiss franc, it can always be just slightly different. But I'm kind of thinking on this basis. But whilst we've already got this sell-off again, you know, trying to not take it too, trying to make it a little bit easier. You know, one other scenario that we could do, like I said, is pretty much up to here, hold the sells and see if we can hedge it, because if we start breaking down to these levels, 94, 93, 92, 90, etc., this could be a bigger sell-off than expected. So yeah, so just curious for that and seeing how that plays off. So US dollar CAD, what I'm looking at for this is pretty much, what was it, 13th, so roughly here. So we basically progressed higher. I was pretty much expecting price to probably give like a deeper recovery, but nonetheless we started to break up higher. So I think I was explaining that we could get into 1.31, and now that we're pretty much there, I am actually looking out for some sells here. So this actually makes sense with USD Swiss franc, that we could be expecting a big sell-off. So again, not very sure if this is worrying economically, you know, due to inflation rates and whatnot. But yeah, basing on the currencies and what I'm seeing, again, just be mindful of how much this is progressing higher, and how much of a steepness price could potentially come to. So just playing that out there. So with that being said, I think that's all that I'm going to be covering for this week. I'm not necessarily too sure about any particular news events that are coming up, but I think what I'm suggesting is, you know, just take a look at, I think there's a bank holiday on Monday for the US dollar, so there could be slow price activity on Monday, but yeah, it shouldn't be too bad this week. But let's see what happens with the moves, and we'll always contrast it next by the end of the week and see what is available. And yeah, so if this video did give you any value, please leave a like, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you guys next week.